I've clicked recording so that it doesn't interfere. All right, so let's begin. And then what we'll do is we'll have the recording available for those who won't make it. And hopefully we drive some interaction. Now, because we've taken a bit of time, I know that we won't finish everything. But what I'll do is I'll point out the main parts and then maybe just leave a little bit to cover in the next class, just to put a placeholder where we stopped so that we can pick up from there. So also before I begin, I just need to make this announcement. Have you guys received this invitation? So we're going to have an evening talk at 7 p.m., 7 to 8 p.m. And the link to join is there. Please kindly let me know if you've seen this email or you've seen this communication on the WhatsApp.
No, we haven't.
All right, so could you kindly take these details? And then we can put on the chat. Let me put on the chat the link. It's bit.ly. It's a shortened URL. Cyber Shujaa Job Hunting and Mentorship. So Lorraine, kindly, even maybe as we're going on, just email all of them.
So I emailed the link to them. What else do you want me to email them?
This announcement for the evening talk. Have you seen the evening talk?
Yes.
Yeah. Let me put, I think it's Jen who posted it. I'm actually trying to find the link for Jen. Yeah, it's here. So date today. So please take notes. You can also get it on our LinkedIn. So if you maybe after this session you're wondering how to get it, you can also get it on our LinkedIn. Is that okay? So if you go to LinkedIn and you follow Cyber Shujaa, are you able to see the chat? Has it popped up? Somebody please confirm.
Yes, it has.
All right, wonderful. All right, so let's continue. So in today's class, we're going to introduce some very important concepts that relate to cybersecurity, and they will actually be able to give us a good grounding in terms of our appreciation, even as we start on these trainings. Some of these concepts, we don't want to assume that you know them. They are very important. So let's first of all start by laying the groundwork, and then we'll build on it as we go along. The first concept we're sharing is the shared responsibility model, right? Now, this diagram assumes that you already have an understanding of cloud and you understand what infrastructure as a service is, platform as a service, and software as a service, right? But let me explain without assuming that you know what these terminologies mean. Now, on the very first, the one that is shaded blue, the first column is on-prem. So I'll start from there, then work inward. So on-prem basically is describing the way organizations operate if they are hosting everything for themselves without the use of cloud technologies. So like, for example, I work at USIU, and if we wanted to provide a solution, let's say, to our students for grade managing their grades and basically a learning management platform, and we wanted to do it all on-prem or in-house, we would have to get a room that would operate as a data center, a physical data center. We would need to do all the preparations, cabling for power, for network. We'd need to set up environmental settings like for humidity, temperature control, and dust, you know, the way a server room is. We'd need to install the racks, the physical equipment in that facility. And then we would need to buy actual servers, actual storage, actual equipment, and host it in that data center. And once we're done with the physical setup, we would then now do all the other installations, install operating systems, put in the environment, install utilities, install applications, set them up, configure users, and that's now where we come to the identity and directory. So we'd have a platform for managing our user accounts and policies like Active Directory, and then we will create user accounts, give them privileges on what they can do and what they can't do. And then our users would need to have devices that can access our service. So like, for example, if it's a learning management system, the users would need their own PCs and laptops, or we maybe would have them in the university so that they can access. And then also we would be responsible for managing all our data. Because you see, in this particular first column, it represents a responsibility to the customer or the person who is using these services, and it's the entire stack, if we could call it a technology stack. The responsibility all falls on the user or the customer. Sorry, Prof. Judy has called me. I've just remembered she needs a number. Oh, I've just remembered, sorry. Now I don't have power. Actually, it has just come back as I was talking about that. So let me just text. I'm so sorry about this. All right, now let's discuss how that differs with the infrastructure as a service, okay? So please work with me. And now we're moving away from us hosting everything to us now getting services that are being provided by a cloud service provider. Now, at the very least, what we would want the cloud provider to do is set up this data center, because remember, the cloud, even though we draw it as this fluffy white thing in our diagrams, is an actual physical investment where service providers install very huge data centers that have built-in redundancies and that are able to host a pooled set of resources that customers can share. So like if we go to Microsoft, and Microsoft has a huge data center, and we ask them, please allocate me a server which I can access over the internet, because that's also something else that is part of the quality of the cloud. Other than the resource pooling provided by a service provider, customers can access on demand through a network, let's say the internet. So I go to the internet and I create a virtual machine, or I set up a server. Now, at the very basic, if I don't involve the service provider to do anything else for me, other than just give me that server that I can now work with, that is called infrastructure as a service. And I would need to specify in great detail the CPU, the processing capacity. I would have to specify the storage, the RAM, all these specifications of even, the capacity and the abilities of that platform. I would need to get into the details of them. And thereafter, it's me now to manage the installation of the operating system and my applications. So I'm responsible for everything else other than the physical setup. So can you see the grayed out portions are the ones which the service provider handles, and the blue portions are what now as a customer I will handle. So for the infrastructure as a service, I handle more. But as I even go to platform as a service, which is when a cloud customer just wants a platform for development work, in many cases to build solutions using components that are provided by the service provider, and then them customizing or integrating their own input, and then building now something that other users can use. That's what is called a platform as a service. And I'll be showing this in the next section. So if I go to platform as a service, I ask the service provider to do a little bit more for me. So in this case, even the platform can be already set up with an operating system. If you think about containers, and probably what I'm just doing is setting up a particular application. Just the code part, the coding part is what I handle, and setting up of the, identity and authentication and access control, but now getting more assistance from the service provider. So the responsibilities change in that sense, and they are shared in that sense. Now, if I go even further and I want a fully working application, a fully working software, and all I do is log in and use it, and I'm not bothered, and I don't even know the details of the infrastructure, of the operating systems, and all these other setups, all I do is just log into a fully functional solution, then that is what is called software as a service. Now, in this case, the responsibility of the service provider is more, right? You can see the part that I'm now responsible for as a customer has reduced to even what we would call the bare minimums, okay? So, some two observations I'd like you to make, even maybe as a summary. When we're engaging a cloud service provider, the first three sections of the data center, physical data center, network, and the hosts, that is the responsibility of the service provider. Can you see it's all gray? And that's regardless of what type of service we get from the service provider. So either way, when we're going to the cloud, we're basically asking the cloud service providers to handle the physical responsibility for the data center and the resources, the physical resources in that data center and the facility. Now, in a similar way, the top three will always be a responsibility of the user or the customer, all right? My username and password, and how I manage my password, making sure that I don't, expose it, get it compromised, even the session tokens, if we're in a programming environment, making sure I safeguard how the logging in and the utilization on the platform is done, then that is my responsibility. What will happen is the cloud provider will give me those features, but it is up to me to set them up and use them correctly. Similarly, data and information is my responsibility. It will never be the responsibility of the service provider, even in software as a service, such that if there's compliance regulations, yes, I've outsourced the cloud service, but it is still my responsibility to make sure data is protected. So sorry, that's my son. I'm working from home. So these are the things that we need to make sure that we've attended to. Similarly, any end user devices, like if it's a mobile phone, a laptop, or a PC that's accessing the platform, that is always the responsibility of the user, never the service provider. So those endpoints, they need to be protected with, let's say for anti-malware solutions, you need to make sure that those devices are safe, even as they access the cloud, okay? So it's still the responsibility of the user. So is that clear? So very important concept. You'll never really talk about cloud and even security at whatever level without a good understanding of this. So let me quickly demo. I'm just going to demo this on the Azure portal, if you guys can see my screen. So I'm just going to stop sharing briefly, then I share the right screen, the one that has that that in the demo. Let me just share, then you see the process of getting this. And then I'm also going to mention a few things which I think are important. So let's go to portal.azure.com, even as I do the demo. So in this case, for the demo, I'm just going to use my USIU account. And it's important that I mention this because many of you are students and you have your .ac accounts or .edu accounts, and you are within the Microsoft Partnership and Academy. So those accounts actually qualify for free subscription. And if you log in, and you can actually try and follow along, and then you can ask questions in case there's something that is not clear. I just clicked subscriptions. But for you, I know like the first screen when you log in, you'll have a welcome page which has like 3 offers. And I'll show you those 3 offers like this. So they're opening. So I actually didn't have power. It has gone again. So I'm tethering on my phone. Just a minute. Okay, we'll go as far as we can. So now, there are usually 3 options when you start your subscription. The first is $200 free credit, and you can only subscribe to this once. And you get the $200, and then once it passes the allowed time, you'll still get some of the services free. But like you see, like now, I have already utilized this. So, and you can see there are many options available here. So let me just click here so that you can see this. Lorraine, you can still see that, right? So you get $200, which must be used within 30 days. But then after the 30 days, you get 12 months of some free services. There's some services that are free. Now, let me just say I've already consumed this, so it will never be available for my account anymore. And for this one, you'll need a credit card. And I also need to tell you that I ended up paying about 15,000 Kenya shillings because of a mistake I did. I used some services and then I didn't monitor them closely. You know, the way you do some work, then you forget and you just leave. So I should have actually stopped those services. So they ended up billing, and because it was on my credit card, that money went. So you just need to be very careful. It may be free, but then if you don't monitor it, you might end up paying. All right. So in a sense, did they get back their money? So that's a question to think about, right? So then there's pay as you go. With this one, you just pay and utilize the services, and you pay for them based on the billable rate. There are some which will be free, but then there are some that you will just need to pay for. But it's a pay as you go, meaning it's like meter, it's like the electricity. You just pay what you use. You're not required to commit to anything. So this is what they're saying: no upfront commitment, and you can cancel anytime. Okay, but you'll need a credit card. Now, the one I'm telling you about is the student one. Okay, and that's the one I'm currently using. You won't need a credit card, and you will be able to start and get $100 free. And I can tell you this is working because I tested it as good as yesterday, okay? So all you just need to do is click the start free specifically for the student one. So if you have those student accounts like me with the .ac and .edu, and you're a Microsoft partner, you will get it, okay? Now, something else. So remember, this first section of the training, we're going to be covering SC 900, which is the foundation for security. It's like the entry-level certificate for security. So if you could just go to your, I'm just trying to see what I was opening earlier. Sorry. Let me just open it here so that I show you what I mean. So if you do SC 900, you'll see what I mean. You'll just come to the Security, Compliance, and Identity Fundamentals page. This is how it looks like. Now, the account, like you can see, if you can see my screen, I'm using my USIU account, and I'm accessing learn.microsoft.com. Now, these slides that you're seeing and the content that you're seeing me show you actually are coming from here. Okay, so I've taken time to go through each of these modules and I've put them in the slides. So that's what we're going to go through. Now, the other training you will attend is so I'm just showing you AZ 204, right? That's the other one you're going to attend. This is part of developer, the developer associate. Similarly, you come to learn.microsoft.com and then you just come and get the entire training of what we'll be going through. This is what we're going to be going through in the next 12 weeks. A combination of this security concepts and also developer. So we're going to be combining security and the development work, right? With a bit of customization. All right, so what I'm basically saying, if you're asking where these slides are coming from, they're coming from exactly here. All right. Now, something else I want to show you right from the beginning is also if you just go and type GitHub, Microsoft Learning, you can see it already came up because that's what I've been using. If you click GitHub and you go to Microsoft Learning, you will actually come and find the labs we will be using. Okay. So, so the repository like SC, I'm just searching for SC 900. That's one of the repositories we're going to be using. So if you see this, these are the different languages. You want to pick the one for English, okay? Actually, I'd accessed it just now. It's in my history, I know. So let me go to, yeah, you can see it's here. It was in my history, so you can just search for it. And if you scroll down here, it will give you an explanation. And this is part of the classroom material. So we're going to be using, so let's see, it's under, I think, all files. And we'll be picking different labs, okay? See under instructions, index. Anyway, but don't worry, we'll simplify this for you. So we'll be picking the labs from here. So you can see, so for example, if we want to explore Entra ID, so we'll be doing, let's say we give you 10-15 minutes, 10-15 minute scenario, and then we're able to explore the features within Entra ID, but we'll be guiding you on this. So what I just wanted to do is to show you the repository of the Microsoft Learn content. And you can see even here, 204 is another one that I was already looking at. This is the one you're going to be doing. And you can already see, it also tells you some of the things. You can even see it saying the students should be taken to this particular set. You can see here that it's easier to follow this one. It's a GitHub IO link. So this is easier. Now, we might just pick a few of them to do the demos on, but I'm showing you where they are so that I'm empowering you to even do more. So should you have interest, you can even do a lot more than some of the things we'll be showing you, okay? And you also now know where the repository for the other labs is, okay? So Lorraine, I think the other thing I wanted to mention is the Cyber Shujaa learning environment, but I think it's not yet fully set up. So what I wanted to say is that we will be doing this over the weekend because we were still stabilizing on the different ones of you and assigning you to your tracks and giving you your user accounts, but it will be something similar to this, okay? So we'll have even the recording we did on the day we did the welcome and onboarding. So what we'll be doing, we'll be embedding the videos for every week. We'll be giving an overview. So let me just give you, like, for example, week 2, which is cybersecurity essentials. We'll be giving the learning outcomes. We'll be giving you the slides. We'll be embedding the slides of what we are, like the presentation slide. This one seems to be having a problem. It's saying currently being previewed. I think we're working on it. But then we'll be providing the presentation slides, and also we'll be giving you like an assignment to do. And when you complete the activities, it will also be tracking your progress as a percentage of your completion. Okay. So I think it's just important for us to mention that so that you are aware of what to expect even when you get the LMS. So we'll be providing a link to the recording, but also remember we'll be taking attendance. And part of the things we'll be reporting is on the attendance. So like Lorraine will be, like after the meeting, we have the Teams gives us an attendance report. And the attendance report is quite detailed. It even tells us how long you stayed in class. So if you just join and drop off, it will tell us maybe you were there only for 30 minutes and then you dropped off. So it usually records. The Team's attendance is quite detailed. So anyway, so part of the way in which we'll track your progress is on completion of assignments and attendance. And also we'll be giving you the exam, which is an external exam for you to certify. So you also need to be preparing for that. But I've shown you where the resources, we've basically shown you where the resources of what we're working with are coming from, okay? Now, any questions so far? So I was demonstrating something important. So let me just come back again to it. There's something hidden. You know, these controls for, all right, so I've shown you how to get your student account and where to see your subscription. So all you just need to do to activate is Start Free. Let me say I've been using this for over 5 years. I've been using my Azure account for over 5 years. And every year I get a renewal of $100. So this $100 is allocated every year, right? Yeah, you claim it yearly. So if you finish it, you just need to wait for the next period. And by the way, even in a year, because I also teach a number of classes, I don't finish it. I usually don't finish it, right? But of course, also with a student account, you'll need the university email. You'd also need a phone number. You won't need the credit card, but you will need a phone number. You will need a phone number to register in addition to your university email. Now, coming back to IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, I just want to show you a feeling of what that looks like, and we'll be doing demos more from next week. Can you see my cursor? It's on the left-hand side. You can see where I'm clicking. And if you're following along, I'd want you to also try that. And I'm just going to go to the services. And when you check the services, let's say I pick like compute, you see a distinction that some of those services are infrastructure as a service. Some of them are platform as a service. So for example, if you look at the list that is listed as infrastructure as a service, virtual machines is one of them. And when you're creating a virtual machine, you will need to set up a lot of detail, okay? So you'll need to specify the infrastructure, you'll need to specify the infrastructure details. Like for example, the disks, right? You need to specify the network, right? You need to do all these settings. And you can see, you can get to a granular level. You can see mine has a bit of an issue. Anyway, we'll sort it out. We'll be getting some credit from Microsoft. And you see that is different from maybe if I was to do maybe an app service, okay? And this is how we'll be doing things. We'll just be selecting the service and creating it. And when you come to the creating page, you have the ability to specify different things. So now the app service is a platform as a service. So let me come back here as a platform as a service and look at the description that is given for the app services without even probably getting into the details of the setup. So one of the things you see is that it's for standardized web apps. So it's like Microsoft and other providers, this is not unique to Microsoft, they will look at the needs, the general market needs, and what platforms developers are looking for. And then they will customize a service, which makes it very easy. It's like setting up a template, which makes very easy for those environments to have everything that they need and the developers to have that already set up for them without them going into a lot of detail of setting it up themselves. And you can see here, this service is suited for web apps. It's suited for API-based, like deployments, and there's for specific platforms. So this service offering targets .NET, Java, Node.js, PHP, and Python. Now, if you're doing development work that is outside of this and is not standardized, it's very specific to your own environment, you will need more control. So the platform as a service is more of this particular standardized offering that has been pre-packaged and prepared so that customers who tend to use some certain services that are very common don't have to go into lots of setup and configuration issues. They find something that is already ready-made for them to use, okay? I hope that kind of makes sense in terms of the platform as a service. Now, if we look at software as a service, the best example is the way we use email, right? And software as a service also happens to be the way we also use, like if any of you have heard of platforms like Salesforce that are used for customer relationship management, even financial applications like QuickBooks, people used to install them in their local servers, in the machines, in their servers within the local environments in the organizations. But now many of them are now saying, can you give us a cloud-based system where I just go and log in and I have everything that I need on the cloud? Okay, so how would that typically look? So it's like just basically you saying that you have an email, you log in, and you have access to all of your emails and everything that you need. It's available. Did I do any setup? No, other than just my account creation, creating a particular user account and setting it up and provisioning it to access the platform. Everything else has been done for me. Do I know, so also I can select Office 365. That's also the same for SaaS, software as a service. I can even come and edit my files. So, and you can see software as a service is using SharePoint as a portal. And in this case, I'm using Excel. And I have all the features of Excel and I'm able to manage this particular document online. Do I know what server it's running on? No. Do I know what operating system, what memory, all those different setups that are driving this solution to work? I don't know. All I know is that I logged in and I can use it. So that's the software as a service offering, okay? So I hope with that, those demos you're able to distinguish, and I'm also looking to see if there are any questions. Any questions on this? All right, so fairly clear, right? So let's now continue to the concepts that we're covering. So the other concept that we're covering is defense in depth. Now, what this basically means is that we approach security in layers. We don't say security is one big investment. We'd like buy this one big firewall and we are safe, right? No. So it's like when I lived in the UK, I lived there for about 2 years, and you learned that in the UK, the weather changes suddenly. You could have gone out when the skies were nice and blue and it looked like a perfect day, and then suddenly it starts raining. Or this very cold wind blows on you and you freeze, right? So like they say that you could even experience the 4 seasons in one day, right? So that's the thing you should expect. So what you learned to do is dress in layers. So instead of going there with one big jacket, the mistake we sometimes do is buy this huge jacket because it's the warmest jacket you've seen, and you think when I wear this one jacket, I'll be okay. But then what you learn from when you're there is that what you do is you dress in layers. You might even see somebody looking like they're not warm, but they have a thermal vest. So you start with a vest. You always have a vest inside. You have the outer blouse. You have a sweater and even a jacket. And even for the jackets, you'll have one which is rainproof. So like you do a lot of walking. Like I did a lot of walking. I used to walk a lot. So you'd have a jacket which was more waterproof. And it's not like here in Kenya, when it starts raining, everybody starts panicking, right? There you get used to it. So it starts raining, you just continue with your life. You have a jacket which you can cover yourself and it will keep you dry. And then when it stops raining, what you just do is remove that outer layer, you know? Anyway, but borrowing the same concept, we say you're not secure by investing in this one big monolithic solution and you say that that's security. No. Security is implemented in having layers of controls, layers of protections, and we're now going to describe the different layers which you need to consider. So we say security, you must consider physical security, even if you're a cybersecurity person, right? You're always thinking, maybe I'm on the cyber realm, I don't have to think about the physical. But just to explain why physical is extremely important, if somebody has physical access to your device, they can bypass all other controls. Giving an example of if somebody has physical access to your server room and can physically touch the server, the physical server, number one, they can insert a malicious USB or malicious disk. And that can easily open backdoors, infect with some malware, and allow for some remote access, okay? They can also press certain buttons on physical devices that reset them. So think about routers, switches, and even access points. If I have physical access, I can reset. I can reset the device, and now I own it, right? After resetting, then I can reconfigure it and own it. So this is the thing. If you have other, like you say, now if I reset your device, if you had put any configurations of it, they're gone, right? If you had put any protections on it, I remove them. So physical security is extremely important. Don't have an access point in a place where people can reach and reset it, you know, and now end up owning it. You know, there's some things we never really quite think about. And once they do that, they have access to the rest of your network, right? The other layer we usually say is identity and access. So this is about setting up user accounts, defining what users can do and what they cannot do, and basically administering them, seeing the activity, monitoring the usage of those accounts and the activities on those accounts to identify when they're being compromised, okay? And the platforms for identity and access management, this is one of the topics we will really cover in great detail. Remember, Microsoft has Active Directory and now branded as Entra ID for the cloud. Entra ID and Active Directory are some of the most popular access control, identity and access control solutions that you'll find in the market today, all right? And remember, SC900 actually assumes that you'll also get a chance to be able to get into this detail and learn from it, okay? Then perimeter. Perimeter is now where we say it's the distinction between your internal and the external. That's the boundary between the internal and the external. Now, we usually say that you want to put in controls, and I'll give you one very popular control for the perimeter. It's the firewall. The firewall basically sits between your in and your out interface. So like, for example, if we were in USIU, seated there geographically, physically present in USIU, we will have our local network, which we set up within the organization. And then we have a router from the ISP that connects us to the internet. The boundary between our internal network and the internet is really where our perimeter is. Now, of course, with COVID, a lot of remote work was provisioned. People were now accessing resources remotely and doing remote work. So what we've said is that the perimeter has actually become very porous. it has really changed. The nature of how we used to see the perimeter has really changed. And we need to really think, and we're going to be talking about zero trust later, and we really need to rethink our cybersecurity mindset, and our models need to be the zero trust models because the perimeter has really changed. But you can see an example of perimeter control that we need to really think about, other than the firewall, is denial of service protection. So we have people coming from the internet trying to access our internal resources or resources that we are hosting. What if they overwhelm? What if they try to overwhelm our resources with many requests? Yeah, so we need to be able to have protection against such attacks, which is what we are calling the denial of service attacks. Then we also need to have network security measures. These are the ones that will also limit access and also segment our network. Like, we won't have one flat network. Firewalls also work here. IDS and IPS solutions work here. SIEM tools also work here, where we're able to collect information about what's going on in the systems. And we are basically now also being not only securing, also setting up routing and switching security controls, and data as it moves on the network. We're also securing our network by encrypting even our sessions. We are considering all these things at the network level, okay? We also need to put in controls at the compute level. Compute level is at the machine level, at the host level. And in many cases, here we are hardening. Have you guys ever heard of the term harden? We need to harden our machines. So in this case, you can see here, closing ports that are not in use, uninstalling software that we're not using, disabling services that we are not using, installing updates and patching. These are things that we do to harden the machines and prevent them from being exposed to attacks, right? Then we also need to have controls at the application layer. And this touches on a lot of what you'll be covering in this course: software security, securing the development process, integrating security into the development process, and shifting left. That's a term we will be using. Building security right from the beginning of a project, even in terms of threat modeling, thinking about the different scenarios that threat actors can act and basically compromise your systems, all right? Also, this is where we do, for example, vulnerability scanning of our code, penetration testing to see whether our code has any flaws that can be exploited, right? So if you have a web application, we will be testing against the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities and using different tools to test and see whether we can gain access, right? Are you guys resonating with what I'm explaining? And then we also think about the data layer, the controls in the data layer. Here we're also thinking about how do we protect our crown jewels. The most precious thing for us is usually the data. And here we're thinking of encryption as one of the key controls for our data security. And we're thinking of encryption when data is at rest, when data is in transit, and also when data is being processed, okay? And also we're thinking of data loss prevention, because we're in the area of privacy, we're in the area of data protection, building secure by design our data, so that people don't move our data and exfiltrate it when it's very sensitive. So the term that's usually used there is exfiltration, the attack, okay? Exfiltrate. So this is the concept of defense in depth, okay? Any questions? Great. So I was just having a look to see if I'm seeing any questions. Now, let's also talk about controls. Let's talk about controls. Now, we say that they're usually, some people keep it to 3 categories, but let me try and break it down into 4. Now, controls are basically mechanisms that we use to protect our systems. And they can be of this different categories. The first is administrative controls, or what is being called managerial controls. These ones usually come as policies, procedures, or guidelines that give structure and give guidance as to how things should be done in the organization and how we need to manage security, okay, in our systems. They're usually given by management, and that's why they're called managerial. And they're usually given, as directives that need to be complied with internally. Now, there are some sources that don't distinguish further to operational controls, but this one actually does. So let me explain how this also is different with operational controls. Now, operational controls go into the type of controls that have to involve people, that involve people conducting certain processes or activities on a regular basis. All right. So the policy is there, but the operational controls now come in the actual doing of the activities by people, not automation. Okay. So let's look at an example. Now, if we have to change code, if we have to change a configuration, let's say on a router, we may institute what we're calling a change management process. Somebody doesn't just wake up and go and reconfigure. No, they have to detail what exactly they want to change and why they're changing it, the impact that it may have, rollover scenarios where if the change doesn't work and becomes, it interferes with the proper working of a system, that it can be rolled over, okay, and the previous status returned. So it's very important for us to have a proper process that then approves changes before they are applied. That's an operational control. Another one is incident response. So we may have a plan, incident response plan, that dictates what happens once the organization has been attacked, it's been hit, and how different people playing different roles are engaged until we resolve the incident, okay? It will touch on things like raising of tickets, involving engineers to investigate and to, correct issues that have been identified, forensics involving gathering of evidence in case we want to go after the bad guys, communication, how we handle sensitive communication to the public and all other stakeholders so that we don't damage the image of our organization. These are things that will be done by actual people, the activities that they will need to engage in, and they're defined in an operational basis, okay? So I hope it's clear how to distinguish the managerial vis-a-vis the operational. Now, physical controls come in when we need to instill, basically implement protective measures on tangible or physical resources. So that includes our facilities, like where the rooms and the facilities where our equipment is and where our users are. And it can also involve the hardware, the physical equipment that we need to protect. So you can see the list of common controls there, like the doors, walls, locks, bollards, turnstiles. There are many others that are not listed here, but what they would do is probably just restrict access and manage access. Now, the ones we talk about a lot, and it's like when you're in cybersecurity, it's like the only thing you focus on are the technical controls or the logical controls. So this is now where we use technology and we use it to help us implement security. So for firewalls, intrusion detection and protection systems, antivirus, encryption, the different things you set up on an operating system to harden it, all those things now will come under the logical controls. So does that make sense? So again, I'm just checking to see if there are any questions. All right, great. Yeah, so so that is now the elements that we think in terms of the categories, but also controls have a function. Now, in this one, I want us to interact a little bit, and let me ask a few questions and then see how you explain how that control, for example, is deterrent or preventive. So preventive basically stops something from occurring. Deterrent basically discourages, it deters somebody from doing something bad. Detective is if something bad happens, we will notice it, it will raise an alarm. Corrective is when we fix, okay? When we use controls to fix something, those are corrective. Compensating is when we have alternatives, such that when something that is primary doesn't work, we have a fallback measure on another control. Then directive is when there is enforcement, control of actions to just basically force users to take specific actions, and it raises the level of security, okay? Now, let me ask you, you've seen CCTV mentioned there under deterrent. Let me ask, how would you guys see CCTV as a deterrent control? And would any of you consider it also a detective control? And how would you explain it? So thank you. I can see we've increased, at least we are beyond the 10 people mark. Thank you so much, Lorraine, for reaching out. Because if I remove myself and you, we have at least 11 students. So thank you. So I think we've been having the links one, maybe you guys didn't see them in good time and all that, but thanks for joining. Sorry. So how do you guys see CCTV from the perspective of both deterrent and detective? Can you hear me? Please, let's engage. Super. Rona?
I see it as a deterrent control in such a way that if somebody wants to break in or tamper with data, if they know there is something that's recording them doing so, they might be discouraged to do it altogether.
Yes.
As well as a detective control in such a way that if they decide to go ahead with whatever they're doing in terms of tampering with any data and so on, the security guards and security officers within an operation are able to see what has happened and instead detect who has, they can tell who damaged or tampered with anything that was going on in the organization.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. I really like that you added the element of the guard, because the CCTV itself, in itself, won't detect. It's actually the guard who's monitoring the feed or who's analyzing the feed who will pick up something is going wrong. But we're also in the age of AI. So you might have a platform which basically receives the CCTV feeds and maybe has some form of face recognition or motion detection and probably is looking for specific patterns. And if it sees them, maybe if it's somebody who's flagged as someone who's not allowed, if it sees that, it can then raise the alarm because it's detected using maybe face recognition that there's somebody who's not allowed to be there. Or maybe it spotted some activity that is classified as malicious. So in itself, it will need a guard or something else, and in itself is not really fully detective. But now let's look at the deterrent part. Like you've said, if somebody sees the camera, now they don't know whether the camera is working. They don't know whether it's actually a dummy. You know, there's some places that have dummy cameras. They're just because it's cheaper than having a whole network and the systems behind it and everything. But I'm not saying that they'll be dummy, but you might find some organizations have some that are live and some that are not working. But the fact that somebody sees it and thinks that they'll be seen and recorded, they don't know what's really happening in the background. The person who's likely to be doing something wrong will think twice because they think they will be spotted. Yeah. Same thing. If you have an exam and the examiner is monitoring what you're doing, if you are planning to cheat in that exam, you're likely to reconsider it, right? Especially if that person is standing next to you. Whether they are seeing you or not, you'll really think twice. Anyway, but in this day and age, I don't know whether that works. Anyway, but that's an example. So now let me ask you maybe one more. And sorry, I saw another hand up. Maybe I can give the, but the hand went down. I think maybe it's from the discussions that we had. Now, having a guard. So let's say I have an organization, and at the door where people get in to the organization and out, there is a panel where people have to swipe their cards. People have to swipe in and out. And I still have a guard at the door. What control would you say that is in this list? From the list that you can see there, I have a access control where people have to swipe before they get in and out of my organization. And I've even invested in a very good door and very good technology, but I still put a guard. So just a bit of participation, because I know it's there and I've mentioned it. It's just that I didn't classify it in the list. Yes, Lewis, please go ahead.
I would think it is a deterrent having the guard there. Because in as much as someone might gain access to a card or someone else's badge, the fact that a guard is there might deter them from actually using that, stolen badge card.
Yes. Okay. And I think also something else that is coming from our discussion, a control can be more than one thing. So that same guard that we were saying is a detective control in the CCTV footage can also be deterrent when people see him standing there, right? And I like what you're saying, Lewis, in the sense that we don't always think that people will use the things we've given them correctly. So sometimes you might need to have someone to check and enforce it. So also you might have people who want to enter riding on somebody else's card. So maybe there are two people. So instead of each of them swiping, one swipes then to enter or even for enter. So the guard is there to enforce that everyone who comes in swipes, right? But also, you can also think of the guard being there as a compensating control, an alternative control. Now, this is the reason why I was trying to bring it out. Compensating controls are manual, in many cases manual, that substitute an automated control should the automated control not work or not work as it should. So when people are not swiping, or when people are using other people's cards to swipe in, that is basically making the first technology, which was the automated technology for access control, not work as it should. So we might want to enforce with another control, which is a compensating control, to enforce it. And also maybe when the automated control fails, we have the guard there maybe to help and make sure people don't get stuck. And maybe even have a logbook. So the guard is also recording. So the guard is also keeping a manual record, even though there's a soft record being logged every time somebody swipes. The guard is also writing and having another alternative to have a log of what exactly happened, okay? And particularly in very high sensitive environments. All right, so that's as much as I wanted there. We're making progress. I can see it's already 3:30. Like I said, because we started a bit late as we were waiting for more to join, we might not finish everything. And whatever we don't finish, we'll pick it up in our next class. Now, very foundational in cybersecurity, concepts of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. All right? Confidentiality is about ensuring only the people who need to access something have access to it and nobody else. And they have access to it to the level they have been allowed and not more. So that's confidentiality, okay? Integrity is something has not been tampered with. It is trustworthy, it is whole, it is accurate, it has not been changed without authorization. That's integrity. Availability is when we say the system is usable. It can be accessed by the people who have been allowed to access, and it's not down. It has not been interrupted. There is no impediment to accessing it. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, let me ask you a few questions to see whether we see the classifications coming out clearly. Now, what is being attacked if my laptop is stolen? And please explain. So my laptop is stolen. Please, let's engage. Lewis, please.
So the example of having a laptop stolen, I feel, is a bit wide, but I would.
It's intentional.
Okay. I think the first immediate attack will be availability. The first immediate attack. Availability in the sense that you will no longer be able to access your data.
Yes.
Now, let me try and move in a bit forward. In case your laptop didn't have a password, then you end up losing confidentiality and most probably integrity in case this person decides to perpetrate an attack to a third party.
Okay. Now, integrity here, we don't mean it in the sense of your reputation. But I agree from the confidentiality part that if you did not put a password, if your data is not encrypted, because you know that people can also access your disk, even though it's not on the same machine, then we say any data that was on that disk can be accessed, and then that means you've lost confidentiality. Now, so many times, and especially from I think the let me not categorize blanket wise, but many people usually just see the loss of access, availability, but they don't drill down deeper into thinking of the data and whether it was well protected. So well done in also recognizing what I was trying to bring out from the confidentiality part. Okay, now let me ask another one, which is, I have downloaded, I'm going to look for Office, a cracked version, right? I don't want to buy it, no licensing issues. And I go to filehippo.com. I don't know if you guys know that site or whatever it is that you guys go. And I get a cracked version of Office and I install it on my machine. And then I notice my machine is getting slow and is misbehaving. It's not the way it was before. Pop-ups, it's freezing, you know, all those things. And also my network utilization is quite high. What would you be immediately seeing as the cybersecurity issue there? Again, it's wide, so just for discussion. And then we move on. Anyone? Thank you, Rona.
I think for starters, it would be the confidentiality affected, because more often than not, cracked software usually comes with unofficial sources and can often contain malware or malicious code. So it will compromise the confidentiality of your data by stealing any sensitive information and sending this information to unauthorized third parties without knowledge.
Yep.
As well as the integrity might also be compromised.
Yes.
Because the malware that comes associated with the cracked software tampers with the integrity of the computer system and any data that's being stored on the system. That means it might modify, delete, or install any additional malicious software. I'm not sure how to explain in terms of availability, but I know it might be affected in some sense.
Yeah, because you're not working as you would. You're getting interruptions and you're getting impediments, right? Your machine is slowing down, right?
Yes.
So it's an attack on the three. So I just wanted to bring it out, and you've done a good job. So thank you so much. And even the integrity part, that you have software that is cracked, it lacks integrity. Microsoft cannot vouch for it that it's exact same code it gave out when it deployed it. So there's that likelihood that other code has been added into it to do hidden and malicious things when you install it. So that's the point I also wanted to bring out, the element of that code itself that you're running, that software that you're running is also, it lacks integrity, okay? And when we download software, this is now common practice, and we're discussing this from you guys being also software practitioners. Whenever you bundle software, and I think you've seen this as part of the practice, is that the hash value, have you guys seen the hash value being given together with the software bundle? And the hash value is usually this string, or sometimes called a digest. So if I was going to download, let me just pick Kali Linux download. You guys know of Kali Linux, and we're going to be using that even when we're doing software penetration testing. So I'm just going to pick, let's say, and I'm going to share my screen. I'm just going to pick maybe the page for downloading the pre-built VMs. This is also something that software guys need to really give for integrity purposes. You see, this is a page where people can get download a VirtualBox machine, a pre-built Kali Linux for VirtualBox. Can you see what it gives? The sum. And you can see this sum is a 256 checksum, sometimes called a digest. And once you download this 2.9 gig, you need to have a hash calculator. Many of them are integrated on the command line. You just basically calculate the SHA-256 sum of that file, and it should be this. If that file is not this, no, it has been tampered with. That VM, so based on the person who's released it, in this case the vendor, they're basically saying the one that we can vouch for is the one that matches this hash. If you have any other installer, any other software image that is not matching this, then it's not genuine, it's not from us. Yeah. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. All right, so let's push on because time is not on our side. And I want to extend this to what we call, have you guys heard of information assurance? Now, many people would talk about information assurance and not just CIA. You can see it starts with CIA, but also adds non-repudiation, authenticity, and authentication. Now, let me explain these three because it's very important. In security, we always need to ensure that if a transaction takes place, it cannot be denied. if entities engage in a particular transaction, there needs to be proof that it was the entities that actually did it and that the transaction actually happened, and it can later on not be denied. This is a very central concept. So systems need to have features for non-repudiation. So it's like me going to an ATM, withdrawing 5,000 shillings from my account, and later on saying, I never did it. Or saying, actually, I didn't download 5,000, it was only 500. You guys are tampering with my account and you're stealing from me. So you see, the bank systems have to have things built into them for non-repudiation. If something happens, we can verify it actually happened and who did it, and it can be accounted for and cannot be denied. Okay. And just to say, a lot of the logging features, a lot of the ability to even do this offline, where it's not on the system only, it's been removed from the primary system where the activity happened to another. And you also have some checks in different stages of a transaction to verify that it has been done correctly, and the things that deliver non-repudiation. If you think also about blockchain systems, many of them involve checks and balances to say, this has already been committed, it cannot be tampered with, and it has proof of who did it, okay? So authenticity is another one. In the era of deep fakes, when the generation of having to deal with AI deep fakes, how sure are you're dealing with a genuine entity and not a fake entity? What if you're dealing with an impersonation? So we also have to build systems that can prove their authenticity, their genuineness, all right? Even the communicating parties, even the messages that are being exchanged need to also be validated to be authentic. Now, there's also authentication, and authentication is a process of verifying the identity of those entities, whether they are users, whether they are processes or software that are interacting, or devices. There needs to be a way in which we can verify their identity, and we'll be building on this a little bit more, right? So we have about 10 minutes. So let me get to zero trust. Now, zero trust is a very, very important principle. And we actually started using this term very, very, very often after the COVID pandemic and people were working from remote places, and the perimeter. Remember when I talked about the perimeter becoming porous? It became that now people are not just working from their physical organizational premises. They're coming in from all over the place, all over the country, all over the world, and they need to still be given access to very secure systems. Now, the principle here is that trust no one and verify everything. That's a principle that is carried over in zero trust, in the zero trust model. And it basically has the tenets that we need to verify explicitly anything that is to be done on the system. We don't assume, no assumptions. So let me give an example. If you're on an e-commerce platform or a banking internet portal, we may have logged in, and maybe the assumption is that we logged in correctly if we're already in it. But when we come to transferring money, we will be prompted again to log in. Why is that the case? It's possible that sessions have been hijacked. It's possible that there's something called cross-site request forgery, and we'll be discussing that in detail because you guys are in the software lead. Could it be that my login was compromised and now somebody is trying to do another process that then will enable them to even do more damage? So every time that there is a sensitive activity to be done, the user is verified again explicitly by prompting them to log in again. So if you're doing a transfer, like an actual money transfer, no, stop, we'll ask you to log in again. And the login is not just password based, it involves multiple factors of authentication. So that is now the strengthening of the identity and access control for Zero Trust. The other thing is we will go for least privilege access. We will always give people just what they need and just in the period of time they need it. So if I tend to do administrative roles, I will only be given admin access just in the time period I need it, but otherwise my account will always be at the default lower level. So I will just move to maybe privilege access and then revert back to my normal user account when I'm done doing my administrative work. And then other users who don't need admin access will not be given admin access. We will tailor their access to the level that they need it and not anything more. Now, we'll get into details of this when we do Entra and when we do access control and management, okay? The other element is always assume you've been breached. Always assume that the worst has already happened. And what that basically means is we want to segment. So like, for example, if we had resources on a network, we won't allow flat networks where people can hop from one resource to another easily. So again, also the defense in depth tries to bring in the element of assuming you've been breached and giving multiple challenges before somebody can access even our data. For example, they will be given multiple challenges to resolve before they can access something, okay? So we don't make it easy. Okay, we don't make it easy. We have multiple controls and we always assume that we're in a position where we've already been attacked. How do we limit, even if somebody was in our network, even if somebody was in our system, how do we limit how much damage they can make? Because we've already assumed that they're in there already. And then also what provisions have we put to detect when they're there? So very detailed logging, analysis of what's going on, integrations of even AI to pinpoint patterns that are out of normal, out of the normal, okay? So all these are the Zero Trust principles, and they apply across all our identities, devices, applications, data, infrastructure, in our networks, right? We need to be able to apply this across our entire organization, all right? And I'm also checking in case there are any questions. Now, for this particular part, encryption and hashing, there are two concepts that we want to contrast and understand in a bit of detail. Now, this is a topic that can be taught for a whole semester. So I'm not going to attempt to do that, but I'll try and give a practical spin on it so that then you can find it useful. So first of all, I think for starters, let's understand what encryption is. It's when we take plain text, we apply an algorithm, and we use a key to basically set the settings for that algorithm. And what we get out of that is ciphertext. So the text we get, which we can't read, which we can't quite make sense of, is called ciphertext. And from the ciphertext, we can also reverse the process through what we call decryption and get back to the original text or the original message. If we use the same key for encrypting and decrypting, the shared key is what we use for symmetric encryption. Now, the use cases for symmetric is that it's usually much faster, right? Than even the contrary to that, which is the asymmetric. The asymmetric uses key pairs that are related, okay? Such that the key that is used to encrypt cannot be the same key that is used to decrypt. You need another related key in the pair to do the opposite, to decrypt. So typically, let's understand the use case. Typically, if you want to send me a private message, you will have access to my public key. The key that I make available to the public is my public key. Anyone can have my public key. And usually the way we do that is the certificate authorities, the people who distribute certificates, are able to put them in repositories where people can access them. Sorry, I have many challenges, including not having power, and now my bundles had expired, so I had to buy some more. I know time is up. Allow me just to finish this example, and then I let us finish there. Is that okay, Lorraine? Can you hear me?
Yes, Prof.
Okay, sorry everyone. So just bear with me. So I was just getting some more bundles. All right, so here I'm explaining encryption, and what I was basically saying is that with encryption, you can encrypt and decrypt. The only thing that we take consideration is what keys we are using. If we're using the same key, it's symmetric. If we're using different keys, it's asymmetric. Now, let me mention some technologies around this, and then we will be seeing a small demo, and then we end. So if you hear RSA, what do you think? It's in your slides, asymmetric, okay? Elliptic curve, these are the popular ones that are used. Asymmetric, okay? What if we digitally sign documents? That's also asymmetric. Now, let me explain asymmetric briefly. So when we are on a website, like we were just now on Office 365, our session is usually encrypted, right? Using TLS. And what we usually get when we go to, let's say, Office 365 website is the certificate. So let me actually do the demo, and I'll just skip to that so that we can finish. So I had given you guys this. So like you see here, if you can see, I've just clicked on the padlock. The padlock is in the browser pane, not in the content. You know, there's some people who see a padlock and they sit in the content and they think they're using a secure connection. So those are tricks that hackers use. And you can see here, I can see the certificate. And part of the things that come in the certificate, if you see there, is the public key. So when my device is sending data over the network to this server, it is already aware of the server's public key, so that the data that is being sent is already encrypted by the client. And when it gets to the server is the only one that should have the private key, so that anyone who sees that data, even when it's flowing over the network, they cannot make sense of it because they don't have the private key. Do you get it? So the private key is now used by the server on the end of the receiver to decrypt and then make sense of the data. When the data is when the server is sending the response is encrypted using the server's private key, and it's only the device with the public key to be able to have a look and decrypt, but also with the session information that is also used in that process. But if you want, we can also look at the TLS handshake and the process of agreeing on these encryption parameters, so that even the data coming back from the server to the client is also protected appropriately, okay? Yeah, all right. So let me also now use a site called CyberChef. Have you guys heard of CyberChef? If you haven't, it's a really good platform, and it's a place for practicing the use of different operations, including encryption. And right now, I'm just going to use it to demonstrate encryption and hashing. So hashing is different from encryption in that hashing is one way. So just to show it on the slides before I come now to CyberChef, let me just mention hashing so that then when I come to CyberChef, I explain both. So we've explained encryption. So let me come and explain hashing. With hashing, we use an algorithm where we are able to take in some input, take in take it through a hashing algorithm, and get what we are calling a hash. So like the one I showed you before when we were downloading from Kali Linux, the hash is like a string of characters. That was a 256 character. It was SHA-256, 256 character or 256 byte length hash. Of course, the longer the hash, the better, because it prevents what we call collisions. So we say the hashing is one way, and any input, even if it differs slightly, should always provide a different hash. There should be no similar hash if two inputs are different, okay? If you have different inputs but the same hash, we call that a collision. And a collision is not desirable with hashing. So I'm going to demonstrate that. And the other thing we also say is we never store passwords. Like if you're an application developer, I think you know that. We never store passwords in a database in clear text. The technique that we usually use is the hashing. Now, the only problem is if we have the same password, let's say Lorraine's password and my password are the same, and we apply the same hashing algorithm, our hashes will be the same. And somebody can guess that our passwords are the same if they can see that we match in our hashes. And that's also not desirable. So hashing is usually combined with what is called salting. So salting is we add some randomized characters to the original, which we can always detect and know how to reverse or how to handle, because we never quite reverse the process, but we know how to handle the seeding so that then we can have different outputs after the hashing process, okay? So that if two passwords are the same, if two inputs are the same, they will still not give us the same hash value on the outside, on the output, okay? So let me go to CyberChef. If you want, you can follow along. This is the last thing we're doing, and then we end the call. CyberChef is actually a really good platform for practice. You can download and install it yourself in your own environment, but let's use the online version. So I have my super secret password because we said we don't store passwords in the database in that form. What we will do is I will come to the hashes over here under hashing, and I'll apply, let me throw in MD5 and then bake. So it's already done. So you can see this is a very short, and if you read MD5, if you hover over it, it gives you a small description about the operation. So MD5 used to be very popular, but you can see it's not collision resistant. So it's actually now no longer recommended. Are you able to see the description? The pop-up? Are you guys there? You're awfully quiet.
Yes, we
Lorraine.
can see.
Okay, all right. So we don't use MD5. So like you saw in the previous one, it recommended that we use, let's say SHA, and you can have SHA-256, maybe as a minimum, but maybe better SHA-512. Now look at the length of the digest or the hash. Can you see when I select the different options, it becomes longer? And the longer ones prevent collisions. It's less likely that you will have a collision with SHA-2. And in fact, the industry standard now is actually SHA-3. That is what is recommended, okay? So you can practice with CyberChef and see the different options and play around with them. Similarly, okay, so can you notice that with the so let me put super secret password. Let me add another. Super secret password was my first input. This is the hash that came. Look at what happens if I type super secret password, but I change something small. Like instead of capital P, I put a small p. Do you notice any change in the input should give a different output? Now, hashing can also be for files. It can be for applications. And regardless of the input, the output will always be the same size. That's also something you need to notice with hashing. So do you see this string? This string is 512 bytes. Even if I uploaded, so let me upload a file to apply the hashing. Let's say I was looking at a data sheet for Microsoft XDR. So can you see it's a PDF? So this is the magic bytes. We know it's a PDF file. And can you see the hash that has been provided is the same length as the hashes that were only like some text. That's another feature of the hash. Now, this is different from encryption. So I'm just going to open another CyberChef instance. And in this case, we're going to practice a little bit on the encryption. Now, if I sent you my super secret password, but then instead encrypted it, so let's just pick something. Actually, let me just pick Blowfish. And maybe this is my secret key. So this is my super secret key for my super secret password. I need an initialization vector. So this is my, I'm waiting for it to turn green. Is this hex? No, wait, yeah, sorry. I'm just getting an initialization vector. I had actually done this before. Invalid IV length, it expected 8 bytes. Okay. Yeah, there we go. So you see it had given me a small error there. So what typically happens, there needs to be some initialization vector fed in. So you saw it gave me the error that it needed to be 8 bytes. Did you see the error? Yeah. So I've just given it 8 bytes. And usually also for the hashing to, for the encryption to happen, I need a key. A key is like a lock, a password that the algorithm is the same, but then it changes how it operates based on the key you apply. So now if I sent you this and I told you to use Blowfish, so you need to know what to use to decrypt. So if I told you, so now I'm going to open another screen. This one was for encrypting. And what I've copied is the encrypted. I've copied the encrypted texts. And I now do CyberChef with the encrypted text as the input. So I'm going to put in the encrypted text as the input. And I'm going to use the decryption. And I was using Blowfish to decrypt. But then I need to know the same password or the same key that was used. And I need to also apply the similar initialization vector. Oh, sorry, it's still on hex instead of UFT8, sorry. And by that, applying the operations for decryption, I get back the original text. Okay? Does that make sense? So that's a concept of encryption and hashing that we tried to demonstrate. And Lorraine, I kindly ask that you remind me that we've stopped on GRC. So where we'll pick up is here, governance, risk, and compliance concepts. So that's where we'll pick up from. So in addition to what we'll cover next week, we'll just finalize on that. Yes, Joy. Joy, you have your hand up.
Yes. I wanted to ask about the IV, the initialization vector. What is its purpose in all of this, and is it just a random string of numbers, or how does it work?
Okay, so notice I've picked CBC, which is cipher block chaining. So let me show you how. But guys, remember this is like a course that you can take on its own. CBC, not curriculum, encryption, IV. So let me show you the CBC mode, cipher block chaining mode. So this is how it looks like. So which one is the best diagram to use? Maybe I use this one. How do you visit the site? Yeah. All right. So with cipher block chaining, so what we notice is that we take plain text, we apply an IV. This is just how the algorithm works. We have the initial IV, the one we supply at the very beginning, together with a key, and it encrypts a block or a chunk of the text, generates some ciphertext, especially if it's a lot that needs to be encrypted. Then part of this from the previous operation becomes the IV that is applied in the next, together with the key to encrypt the next block, and it's chained. Can you see there's like a chaining happening? And the chaining is, it takes in an IV component from the previous cycle and then feeds into the next cycle. All right. So that's what is so the initialization vector, yes, it can be randomized in the first instance, but there could also be a way of determining it. So if you also check here, we also, especially when we're strengthening our encryption techniques, the IV should be random and predictable, and it can also not be secret, but the key is what we always keep secret, okay? And also attacks, what attacks can happen? Knowledge of IV is also detrimental. That's why triple DES and DES don't work anymore, right? Because the initialization vectors were easily compromised, okay? So knowledge of the IV before and after encryption and ability to alter IVs can also be detrimental to the whatever, to cybersecurity, to the security of the algorithm. Now I don't have power, so remember I told you guys I've been using my laptop battery. It has actually flashed. It's basically saying it's on the dying moments. And I've also had to purchase some additional bundles just to finish the session. But it's okay. We can probably just have another question if there is. If not, then I can end the session. And we are recording it, so you can always come back to it. The good thing of being on the session is asking questions. That's the main part. That's the reason why you joined, so that you can be able to interact and ask questions. Okay. Any other questions? So, Joy, did that kind of help you?
Yes, I get it now.
Oh, okay, all right.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, good people, it's already time. So allow me to end the session there. We're going to connect next week. Please remember what I've already shared. Please follow up to make sure that you're onboarded onto the LMS. Lorraine has your contacts and she'll be the administrator helping you. Please make sure you have access to the platform, the LMS. We'll be issuing Azure credits next week, so I'm just following up on that with Microsoft. But if you could kindly do what I showed you, access Microsoft Learn, access Azure Portal, just make sure you can even do those things with your normal user account, but then we'll build on that next week. We'll show you how to go about that next week. Is that okay? All right. Thank you so much for joining. Have a good evening. I've just stopped the recording. Have a good evening, and I'll be ending the session. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, Lorraine.